My name is Catherine, and I've reached my breaking point. After 30 years of sacrificing everything for my son, my career, my relationships, my entire life, this is how he repays me. Last night, he told me to my face that I'm ruining his aesthetic. His aesthetic? I bought him a $1.2 million house in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, and he has the audacity to tell me I'm not welcome there because I don't match his carefully curated Instagram lifestyle. Well, you know what? Undone. And absolutely done. This morning I drove to that beautiful house that I paid for with decades of hard work, and I put a for sale sign right on the perfectly manicured lawn. Let's see how his precious aesthetic looks with that. And Marcus, if you're watching this, you're going to regret treating your mother this way. Promise you that. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about family drama and justice being served, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. I never thought it would come to this, but looking back I should have seen the warning signs. They were there all along, little red flags I chose to ignore because, well, he was my son, my only child. I suppose that's what parents do. We blind ourselves to the flaws in our children because we want so desperately to believe we raised them right. Marcus was always a particular child. Even at 5 years old he would arrange his toys by color, throw tantrums if his clothes didn't match, and refuse to eat if his food touched on the plate. I thought it was cute then, my little perfectionist. His father, Richard, used to joke that our son would either become a world-famous designer or the pickiest human being alive. Unfortunately, he became both. After Richard died when Marcus was 12, it was just the two of us. The life insurance money was substantial, but I knew it wouldn't last forever, especially with a growing boy to raise. I went back to work with a vengeance, climbing from an entry-level position at a marketing firm to senior management in 10 years. I worked 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks. I missed school plays, parent-teacher conferences, and countless dinners. But I made sure Marcus never wanted for anything: the best schools, the trendiest clothes, summer camps abroad, and eventually a prestigious university. Was it compensation for his father's absence? For my own? Probably. Is that an excuse for what he's become? Absolutely not. When Marcus graduated with his design degree, he was full of dreams but short on practical experience. He wanted to start his own interior design business catering to wealthy clients, but he needed a portfolio, connections, and most importantly, a base of operations. That's when I made what I now realize was my biggest mistake. Mom, I need to project success to attract success. He told me over lunch at an overpriced restaurant he'd chosen. No one's going to hire a designer who doesn't live in an impressive space. It made sense when he explained it. Sort of. As a marketing executive, I understood branding, image, the importance of first impressions. So when he showed me the listing for a gorgeous craftsman house in Lakewood Heights, the kind of neighborhood where every other resident is a doctor, lawyer, or tech entrepreneur, I didn't immediately dismiss it. It's perfect for my brand, Marcus said, eyes gleaming as he scrolled through photos on his tablet. It has amazing bones, but the interior needs a complete overhaul. I can document the transformation on social media, use it to showcase my design philosophy. It'll basically pay for itself in no time. I remember staring at the price tag, $1.2 million, and feeling my stomach knot. It was more than twice what my own modest home had cost. But then I thought about my retirement account, bulging after years of diligent saving and smart investments. I thought about the college fund that had only been partially depleted thanks to Marcus's scholarships. I thought about Richard and what he would have wanted for our son. I can make the down payment, I heard myself say. But you'll need to cover the mortgage and expenses once your business gets off the ground. The joy on his face in that moment, I still hold on to that memory. It was perhaps the last time my son looked at me with genuine gratitude. At first, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Marcus threw himself into renovating the house, documenting every step on his rapidly growing Instagram account. I was amazed by his talent. He truly had an eye for design. The once dated interior transformed into a magazine-worthy space, with a perfect blend of modern elements and timeless craftsmanship. His social media following grew, and with it came opportunities: small design jobs for friends of friends, a feature in a local lifestyle magazine, even a guest spot on a regional home improvement show. I was so proud. I visited whenever I could, bringing dinner or offering to help with whatever project he was working on. First, he welcomed my presence. He would show me his latest acquisitions, an antique credenza he'd scored at an estate sale, a set of vintage brass fixtures he'd found online, a custom sofa that had taken 3 months to arrive from Italy. I didn't always understand his aesthetic choices, but I appreciated his passion. Then, about 6 months after he moved in, I noticed a change. My visits became less convenient. Actually, Mom, tonight's not great. I'm entertaining some potential clients. Oi. I'm in the middle of a creative process. Can we reschedule? When I did make it past the front door, Marcus would hover nervously, straightening things I'd touched, wiping away my fingerprints from his gleaming surfaces, subtly redirecting me from rooms that were apparently in transition. I told myself it was just the stress of starting a business. That Marcus was under pressure to succeed, especially given the financial investment I'd made. I made excuses for him when he missed our weekly phone calls, when he forgot my birthday, when he declined my Thanksgiving invitation because he was hosting a networking dinner for industry contacts. The real wake-up call came last Christmas. I'd always hosted the holidays at my house, nothing fancy but warm and festive. Last year, however, Marcus insisted we celebrate at his place. My gift to you, Mom, he said. You deserve to be pampered for once. I was touched, truly. I arrived early on Christmas Eve, excited to spend quality time with my son in the beautiful home we'd made possible together. I brought a small artificial tree, the same one Marcus and I had decorated together every year since Richard died, and some cherished ornaments that had been in our family for generations. The look of horror on Marcus's face when I unpacked these items is something I'll never forget. What are you doing? He asked, as if I'd tracked mud across his pristine white carpet. I thought we could set up the tree together, like we always do, I said, already sensing I'd made a terrible misstep. Marcus took a deep breath. Mom, I've already decorated for the holidays. He gestured around the living room, and for the first time, I noticed the impeccably styled decor. A minimalist arrangement of white poinsettias, matte black and gold ornaments artfully displayed in glass bowls, evergreen branches in tall, skinny vases. No traditional tree, no colorful lights, nothing that remotely resembled the warm, slightly chaotic Christmas decorations of our past. This is part of my winter content series, he explained, as if talking to a child. It's already generated tremendous engagement online. I can't just change it now. I put away our old ornaments, feeling foolish and out of place. Throughout that weekend, I tried to adapt to Marcus's new way of celebrating. The precisely timed gourmet meals that looked beautiful but left me hungry. The carefully wrapped gifts that coordinated with his decor. The absolute prohibition against taking any photos unless they were staged and approved by Marcus. On Christmas morning, I presented him with a hand-knitted sweater I'd spent months making. His smile froze as he held it up. A colorful, admittedly imperfect creation that clashed spectacularly with the muted, monochromatic palette of his home. It's thoughtful, Mom, he said, carefully folding it and placing it back in the box. It never made an appearance on his Instagram. I left early the next day, making up an excuse about a neighbor needing help with a burst pipe. The truth was, I couldn't bear another minute of feeling like an unwelcome intruder in my son's life. On the drive home, I cried for the first time since Richard's funeral. I mourned the loss of my son, not physically but emotionally. Somewhere along the way my sweet, particular boy had transformed into someone I barely recognized. Still, I kept making excuses for him. Success changes people, I told myself. He's just finding his way. They'll come around eventually. Then came last month's incident. Marcus had been featured in a prominent design magazine, and to celebrate, I surprised him with an impromptu visit. I brought champagne and flowers, bright yellow sunflowers, my favorites. When he opened the door, his expression shifted from surprise to dismay so quickly that a stranger wouldn't have caught it. But mothers notice these things. Lan, he said, glancing over his shoulder. I didn't know you were coming. That's what makes it a surprise, I replied, trying to keep my voice light. I saw the magazine feature. It's incredible, sweetheart. I wanted to celebrate with you. He hesitated before stepping aside to let me in. Inside I could hear voices, laughter. I have some colleagues over, he explained. We're discussing a potential collaboration. Perfect, I said. More people to toast to your success. I followed him into the living room where three impossibly stylish young people lounged on the furniture I'd helped pay for. They looked up as we entered, their expressions ranging from curious to slightly dismayed. Everyone, this is my mother, Catherine, Marcus said with a tight smile. Mom, these are some fellow designers, Eliza, Damon, and Vero. They nodded politely, and I noticed how their eyes took in my appearance. My department store dress, my sensible shoes, my drugstore makeup. I suddenly felt every one of my 57 years. I brought champagne, I said, holding up the bottle like an offering. And flowers. How lovely, said the woman Marcus had introduced as Eliza, though her tone suggested otherwise. I'll put these in water, Marcus said quickly, taking the sunflowers from me with 2 fingers, as if they might contaminate him. And we'll open the champagne in a bit. I settled onto the edge of a chair that looked more like a sculpture than a piece of furniture, making stilted conversation with Marcus's friends while he disappeared into the kitchen. After what seemed like an eternity, he returned without the flowers. They're brightening up the laundry room, he said when I asked. The laundry room, the one space in the house his guests would never see. As the evening progressed, I became increasingly aware of how Marcus maneuvered to keep me at a distance from his friends. How he winced when I mentioned his childhood nickname, how he subtly corrected my pronunciation of design terms. When I offered to help prepare the elaborate charcuterie board he brought out, he declined with a strained, "I've got it, Mom." The final straw came when I reached for my phone to take a photo of Marcus with his friends. Before I could snap the picture, he was at my side. "Let me take that for you," he said, gently but firmly removing the phone from my hands. "The lighting is tricky in here." He proceeded to position everyone in a specific arrangement, adjusted the blinds to change the light, and then took several photos that looked effortlessly casual despite the meticulous staging. When I asked him to send me the pictures, he promised he would after some light editing. I left shortly after, making excuses about an early meeting the next day. Marcus walked me to the door, and I could feel his relief as he prepared to close it behind me. "Thanks for stopping by, Mom," he said, already has hidden behind the door. "Marcus," I said suddenly, "are you embarrassed by me?" The question hung between us. He looked startled, then guilty, then defensive. "Of course not," he replied too quickly. "That's ridiculous. Because it feels like you are." I pressed. "It feels like I don't fit into this perfect life you've created." He sighed, running a hand through his carefully tousled hair. "You don't understand, Mom. Image is everything in my industry. Everything has to be cohesive, on brand. And I'm not on brand." It wasn't a question. "That's not what I meant," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "It's just, you come from a different generation. You have different tastes. And that's fine. But my home is also my portfolio, my business card. Everything in it needs to align with my aesthetic vision." "Including the people?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer directly. Instead he said, "I appreciate everything you've done for me, Mom. I do. But maybe we should stick to meeting at restaurants from now on. Or your place." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. "I understand perfectly, Marcus." I drove home in silence, no radio, no tears. Just a hollow feeling in my chest where my heart used to be. The next day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 15 years. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by photos of Marcus growing up, birthday parties, graduation, family vacations. I tried to pinpoint the moment when things had gone wrong, when my son had decided his mother was an inconvenience, an embarrassment, a liability to his brand. Then I noticed the deed to Marcus's house, filed away in my financial documents. The house that I had made possible. The house where I was no longer welcome because I ruined the aesthetic. Something snapped inside me. Not in a violent way, but in the way a fever breaks, sudden, clarifying, releasing. I knew exactly what I needed to do. That afternoon I drove to a hardware store and purchased a for sale sign. The largest, most garish one they had. I wrote my phone number on it in bold black marker. Then I drove to Lakewood Heights, to the perfect house with the perfect decor, and the son who found his mother too imperfect to include in his life. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I knew Marcus would be at a client meeting. I parked across the street, marched up to the immaculate front lawn, and drove the sign deep into the ground, right in the center where it couldn't be missed. I took a step back, admiring how magnificently it ruined the pristine view of the house. Then I took a photo, got back in my car, and drove away. My phone rang less than an hour later. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. "What the hell, Mom?" he shouted before I could even say hello. "What is this sign doing on my lawn?" "It's not your lawn, Marcus," I replied calmly. "It's mine. I own the house, remember? And I've decided to sell it." Silence then. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious. Since I'm such an eyesore in your perfect world, I thought I'd remove myself completely. You have 30 days to find a new place to live. One that you can afford on your own." "Mom, this is insane. You can't just..." "Actually, I can. Check the deed. It's in my name." "But what about my business? My clients? My content? Do you have any idea what this will do to me?" "I have some idea what it feels like to be discarded by someone you love," I said. "To be treated like an embarrassment. To be hidden away because you don't fit someone's aesthetic." His tone changed, became wheedling. "I never said you were an embarrassment. You're twisting my words. Look, I've been stressed with the business, and maybe I haven't been as appreciative as I should be. But this is extreme." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like a natural consequence. You don't want me in your life? Fine. But you don't get to keep the benefits of having me in your life. Like $1 million house you could never afford on your own. I'll sue you," he threatened, his voice rising again. "I've put hundreds of thousands of dollars into renovating this place." "With what money, Marcus? Your business is just getting started. The mortgage payments still come from my account. The property taxes are in my name. Even your business loans use my credit as a guarantee." It was harsh, but it was true. Despite his growing social media presence, Marcus's actual income was still modest at best. I heard him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with suppressed rage. "Take down the sign. We can talk about this. The sign stays until we have a real conversation. Not about design or aesthetics or your brand, but about respect and gratitude and what it means to be family." "Fine," he snapped. "When?" "Tonight. 7 o'clock. My house." Before he could object, I added, "My unfashionable, on-trend house with the mismatched furniture, and the family photos and all the Christmas ornaments you're so ashamed of." "Whatever. I'll be there." He hung up without saying goodbye. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange state of emotional suspension. Not quite angry anymore, not quite sad, just waiting. At 6:30, I made a pot of coffee and set out 2 mugs, mine, chipped and worn from years of use, and one I'd bought for Marcus years ago with "World's Greatest Son" emblazoned on it. Sentimental garbage, as he would probably call it now. At 7 on the dot, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Marcus standing there, looking simultaneously furious and uncertain. He was dressed impeccably as always, in a fitted charcoal sweater and dark jeans that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He entered warily, as if my modest living room might somehow contaminate him. "The sign is attracting attention," he said without preamble. "A couple of people were taking photos when I left." "Good," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "Kelsey." He shook his head, remaining standing. "I don't have time for this, Mom. Just tell me what you want so I can get the sign removed and go back to damage control." "What I want," I repeated, pouring myself a cup of coffee with deliberately steady hands. "What I want is my son back." He rolled his eyes. "I'm right here." "No, you're not," I said quietly. "The son I raised would never have treated his mother like an inconvenience. He would never have made her feel unwelcome or less than. The Marcus I raised understood the value of family, of kindness, of gratitude. People change, Mom. They grow up. They evolve. Is that what you call this? Evolution? Because from my perspective it looks a lot like forgetting where you came from." For the first time, a flicker of what might have been shame crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by defensive anger. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Every single detail matters in my world. Every single detail. And I'm a detail that doesn't fit." He threw up his hands. "Why are you making this so personal?" "Because it is personal, Marcus. I'm your mother, and yet you've made it abundantly clear that I'm an embarrassment to you, that I don't belong in your carefully curated life. That's not," he began, then stopped.